Welcome to the Purpose and Possibility podcast. This is your host, Laura Murphy, founder of Soulbody. Join me for inspiring conversations with people who are living on purpose, living into their purpose, and who just might open you up to new and bigger possibility. Welcome back to the Purpose and Possibility podcast. This is your host, Laura Murphy, and I am honored to have you on this journey with me today. Before we dig into today's episode, I just want to acknowledge that the work I do through this podcast and through the parent company Soulbody takes place on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I highly encourage you to take a moment to reflect and learn about the land that you live, work, and play on. In today's episode, I had the honor of interviewing the most incredible person. So she's come across my path over the last few years. She is also the head person responsible for the beautiful design that you see at soulbody.co and on my Instagram account. Her name is Kat Medeiros, and she is the founder and head creative director and graphic designer at Sallua Intuitive Graphic Design. She is a very special soul, and that is like the perfect way I could think of to describe her. I have never met someone in my business career or in my spiritual exploration who actually combines the two so brilliantly. She has a way of intertwining her intuition with what she does in business, which seems so funny. It's the words that are coming to me. It seems so opposite to do so, or so what's the word? Like they shouldn't match together. But when you really think of it, creativity and our creativity is intuition, but she marries the two in such a beautiful, beautiful way. And I really think that she is onto something big. So in today's episode, we talk about just that, where that came from, how she began to explore her intuitive abilities. She talks about, when she first started in graphic design, feeling like the oddball, and just the importance of really digging into and expressing that, because that is where your magic sits. She talks about how she, in that process, lost her curiosity and focused more on the mechanics of graphic design. But then as she progressed in her career, was able to marry the two and it began, in exploring her spirituality and exploring her intuition and just her gifts and connecting to herself. What stood out for me in my conversation with Kat is that she's very in tune. She's very in tune with who she is. And she stands in that. She's able to dabble in the, analytical and thought process of being a designer, but then come back to herself. And I mean, that is what I teach. That is what I teach in breathwork, is the journey in life of continuing to come back to ourselves. She also has explored a topic on her website, and I asked her a little bit about it around business as energy. And it's something that I, funny enough, have been digging into a lot on my own as I start opening up my practice of helping other spiritual entrepreneurs really tap into the soul of their business and expand it to what it can be. So we talk a little bit about that. Without further ado, enjoy today's episode. So Kat, I really want to thank you for coming onto the podcast today. I'm super excited. So when I was dreaming up this idea of a podcast, you were one of the first names that came to my mind. So I have followed you. It's really interesting how the world kind of comes together, because I found you randomly on Instagram a couple of years ago, because I just loved the branding of your business and I just resonated so deeply with it. And then as life progressed, we ended up working together, and you designed the beautiful brand that I have for Soulbody. And I feel that you do things so differently, and I've never seen anybody do it like this in my life, but you perfectly blend intuition with something that is so not, but so is, you know what I mean? With graphic design and just, that creative direction. And I've never seen someone blend their gifts so perfectly with, with their gifts, like your intuitive gifts with your life gifts. So that's why I wanted you to come on and talk. And I also am really inspired, and I think other people will find it inspiring, because I find so often we separate the two in our lives, like our work life and our spiritual, or like, you know, heart-centeredness, and you blend it. And I love that. So, I'll stop raving about you and let you say hi.
Hi, I know. Thank you so much for having me on. And you're making my little heart melt and sing and just feel like totally seen. So thank you.
Oh, this is so
Yeah.
exciting. So why don't we start? And this is something new that I started, and I just feel good about it. But why don't we take a breath together? Because I just want this to
Great.
be heart-centered, and just let's just be present.
Yeah.
So breathing in
Okay.
through your nose and out. I find it so connecting when we can just like have a breath together. Um,
Totally.
so I'm going to start with an easy one. What are you celebrating today?
What am I celebrating today? Honestly, the first thing that comes to my mind is the window fan that we just got during this heat wave, to be honest. It's so hot. So that's where my mind went is yeah, just being able to like stay cool at night, like sleep easily. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those listening, Vancouver has gone through a heat wave, and like we're Canadians. We are not cut out for heat
No,
waves.
we're not prepared, especially on the West Coast.
Oh
Like,
God, no.
no.
Yeah, it's been like, and BC, like no one has air conditioning unless you live in the Okanagan kind of thing. So yeah, it's been interesting for sure. I sometimes
Yeah.
I think it's hotter in my house than it is outside.
Yeah. Yes, I live on the third floor of my building and it's definitely like twice as hot in here, I feel, as it is outside. So
Mm.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
why don't you tell us who Kat is? And you can take this. So my intention in asking this question, and I ask it this way to all my guests, is you can take this wherever you want. Who is Kat?
Who's cat? Oh, who am I? I think I'm just this like bubbly, friendly Care Bear who just wants to like love everyone and dance around and is incredibly inquisitive and curious. Um, yeah, and I just really like think flow moment to moment, but also is a little bit of a hermit and just wants her own alone time to like, you know, I don't know, rest and doodle and kind of hum her little song. So that's who I really am
That's
inside,
the
I
that's
think.
the projector in you. I like as much as
Yeah.
I love being around people, I'm like, okay, I need some time
Yeah.
for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I love you all, but goodbye. See you.
Yeah.
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 And talk to us a little bit about how your gifts are expressing in the world today. So this intuitive graphic design, creative side of you, how do you express your gifts in the world?
Yeah. It is, it's funny, you really touched on it in the beginning. I think it is really different. And the design world, or at least the one that I'm familiar with, is very structured and like systematic and process driven, which I love. I love all that and like the data. But then intuition is something that like flows and is, there isn't always a rhyme or a reason and it doesn't always want to repeat itself. And so I think, you know, I know kind of what the design process is or like what the steps are, but I allow my intuition and creativity, which I think is intuitive, to kind of come in and say, nope, we're not going to go that way. We're going to go this way, or we're going to do it this in this format, or like go over here and look at this and think about this. And I just kind of, I can feel those sensations and I can feel those thoughts. And I just try to let them come in and trust them and explore them and see what happens. And, it really is like breadcrumbs, following breadcrumbs.
Mm.
So,
That is like the
yeah.
perfect way to describe it because I feel like it's the exact same. And I'm sure it hasn't always been that way in the creative process for you. Or maybe it has, but I'd love to hear because like you said, like the design world, like graphic design and like the artistic world can be very like process driven and very like systematic.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us a little bit about your journey to like even just like when your gifts started to awaken and how you started blending that with what you do as a profession.
Oh my gosh. So, I think like with every intuitive, and I definitely identify with that term as being an intuitive, like you are that your whole life. You just don't really know or realize until you're given opportunities or like shown that part of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And pardon me. So yeah, I can, look back into my childhood and be like, oh yeah, those were weird things. That's, I was, yeah, I'm intuitive. Like, at the time you're like, oh, whatever. But yeah, so in 20, so I went to Emily Carr University. It was actually, I applied to be a designer, got totally swept up with painting. So I was actually a painting major for 3 years. So yeah, and then kind of in my fourth year dove back into design and always felt like an oddball. Always had this very strange way of thinking about design because I wasn't used to that like systematic, structured, formulated problem solving brain that designers have. I kind of had this like creative, abstract, conceptual, very playful way of thinking. And then was always playing catch up, and really, I think at some point turned off a lot of that playful curiosity side because I felt like I was inadequate, or I felt like I didn't know how to be a designer, and I really wanted it. So yeah, I got, kind of tunnel vision as a way to be good at it, and really looked at a lot of bad, quote unquote, bad design, and then, the greats like Paula Shear and all that. And then, yeah, finished my degree with that, went into the workforce and like had my internship, and then was a junior at a small agency. And then in 2017, I had a tarot reading at the Good Spirit that like blew me. Yeah. It like blew me out of the water. It was probably the first tarot reading that like made me cry. Like the individual like knew how my ex and I had broken up, like just weird things. And yeah, that kind of catapulted me into like, oh, what is tarot? And like I started meditating, and like none of my friends were meditating. Like this was like, no one was doing that to the degree that I think it's really popular now. Like it was still very like little groups were doing it, but my friends weren't. I didn't know anyone. So I started meditating, and then eventually I started looking for a community, and then that made me discover this like little moon circle, and that's how I met Natalie Miles. And she eventually did this retreat with Chloe, who is now called Channeled by Chloe, and they did this retreat, and it was 3 or 4 days. So I went with my best friend, and it was just like the very first thing they said to us was like, I want you to imagine you have a name tag, and you put it over your heart, and it says, I am intuitive, because you're all here because you're intuitive.
I just got shivers when you said that.
Yeah, it like freaked me out. I was like, I don't know, is that why I'm here? Like, it's still like in total disbelief, and like, no. And yeah, it was just like a crazy, very powerful 4 days, and it changed my life, and, very magical. And I did some intuitive things that blew me out of the water for myself. And I was like, wow, okay, no, I actually am doing this. And there was just a lot of messages around creativity in my business. And I remember receiving a really clear message that like I needed to fully stand and express the fact that I'm an intuitive designer. And, it scared me because I was like, what do you mean? And, but yeah, the more I've kind of expressed that, the more I've been able to kind of, grow my business. And I think at that point, that's, I think, when I really started to like tune in and listen and pay attention to like what my process was and where intuition was showing up and how to hone in on that. And after that retreat, I actually spent 3 months kind of mentoring and kind of learning what my intuitive gifts were, and like learning how to read energy. And I think that's the thing for me, is like, I'm not reading cards, I'm reading energy. So when I work with people, I think I'm tapping into their energy, their words, the energy of their business, like, their mission. And I'm really trying to kind of express that through this designerly, format or like visual medium. So yeah, did that answer your question?
Oh my God, absolutely. I was like taking notes and stuff like that. And where do I want to take this? I want to take it a step back, but I also like want to talk about like incorporating the intuition into the process. Cause I I see you. You know what I mean? Like when we work together, you did see me and my energy and you nailed it. Like I was like blown away by the fact that like I think I asked you to like maybe change like the slightest thing and the rest of it you knew. And it was funny because I think we had a moment where I think you grappled with your intuition a little bit. You were like, I have these two designs, but I really want to show you this one. And that was the one that I was
Yeah.
like, this is it. It's done. Like it's done.
Yeah. And that still happens sometimes. I find it's like the one that scares me the most sometimes, the one that I'm like, no, like I'm not going to show that. Like, what am I doing? And there's always that voice that's like, no, you need to. And that's the one, that's the one. And like, there's a reason why I went down that bunny hole. That bunny hole, and that's what I call it. But I just, my conscious brain, right? The brain that wants to drive is like, no, 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 that's not designerly. That's not the way. But the intuitive heart and the intuition is like, no, this is beautiful. This is amazing. Like, go here, go explore this and share it. Like, they're going to love it.
Oh, the intuitive heart. I love that. I love that saying. Um,
Yeah.
I find, and I want to, this is where I'm going to take a step back. And you mentioned about being like the oddball in design and like, because you were operating from your heart versus like the analytical head. And this is like, I don't even know what my question is here, but I just think this is so important. And I just wish that this is something that society taught us to embrace the most, because most often, and some of the most interesting people that I know were the oddballs. You know what I mean? They were like, because they didn't do it the same way as everybody else, or the way that like you were taught to do it in this structure. And I just wish we could like embrace that like oddness, because that's what makes it special.
Oh my gosh. And I think I like somehow like stand for this, or like maybe this is part of my life mission, because the older I get, the more I return to this over and over again. But it's like our diversity, or the thing that makes us unique or special or weird or odd, is the magic and is what the world needs. And, of course, like I'm intuitive, but the problem solver designer in me loves science. And I always, I think about Darwin. And like he literally talks about how diversity is part of survival for a species. Like that's, so it's just so funny to me that, yeah, we sometimes don't embrace that, or we forget to celebrate that in our society. It's like, hello.
Yes. And then we like, so, and it's like, especially in the creative world, like these systems, like schools and stuff like that, try to pump out people who all do the same thing. You know what I mean? And there's no diversity in what's coming out. So, and like, I understand why they do it, because they want to slot you into a job. You know what I mean? But I just think that, I don't know, if we just like embrace who the person is, like, yes, the systems and structures are really great and it can give you like a baseline of like how to do the job. But like, I just wish they would help us like play up that uniqueness within us. And it's interesting. You also said, and I made a note of this, that in that process, you turned off your curiosity. And I like that hit me to my core, because I think it's the curiosity. And I saw this in my last job, even. It's just like the ability to question, like, why are we doing things this way? And I just think that it's in the curiosity that innovation sits. And like,
Yes, I've got goosebumps. Yes. Yes. And that's actually like a huge part, I think, of like, design, but creativity as a whole. Like if you can't be curious about something, like there's a gap between, okay, structure and systems, and like I know what I'm doing, so I'm gonna go down this path and do it and complete it. And like that beginning stage of like, okay, here we are, we have this problem or we have this goal, like how are we gonna get there? It's that curiosity, that's the gap, that's the magic, and I think all of us have our own unique gifts, whether that's, you're really great at numbers or whatever. That's still to me a form of creativity. And like there is a genius and a curiosity to that that's unique to you, very different from me as a creative, but also unique to someone else who might be good with numbers, right? Like everyone still has that special talent. Yeah. Yeah.
And what advice would you give someone? So, and the reason I asked this is like, when you were speaking, a memory came to me of, I went and had a job interview at one point. Like I met the guy for like lunch, and he was like trying to pitch me a job essentially. And he he looked at me and he's like, I get the feeling, and this is like in the marketing side of my life. He's like, I get the feeling you're an intuitive marketer. And I was like, I was like, thank you.
Yeah. Hello.
And he was
Hi.
saying it from a negative perspective. And I walked away and I was just like shocked. And I was just, I, I don't know, like, and then I took a step back because like it was something that I always taken pride in. Like I have this gut instinct, and sometimes it's wrong, like whatever. Not everything works in marketing, you know what I mean? But I have this like gut instinct, and like, what advice would you give someone who is getting this like, I don't know, who's like the grapple between the head and the heart, you know what I mean? And, how would you encourage someone to incorporate the two, whether it's in entrepreneurship or whether it's in like the technical skills that you have kind of thing.
Yeah. I guess, it's never one thing for me, but one, I would say like um, remember that you're amazing and you're resourceful and you're divine as you are, whether you think you're perfect or not, that's divine.
Mm-hmm.
And so come back to the self, like kind of like ignore what everyone else is doing, put your head down and like come back to your heart. Like, what is it that lights you up, or does this feel aligned or not? And then, yeah, that's the third thing is like, yeah, I mean, I see in my head, I'm like, oh, but I'm a projector. I need to be seen. But I think there's something about recognition, right? Like, you don't want to, if you feel like you're having these intuitive pings and you want to kind of roll with that, whether you don't have to be in a job, like in a workplace and literally express that, you can still follow your gut, right? And I think a lot of us do, without saying that. But if that's not seen or if that's not welcome, then you just have to get curious, right? Is that the space that you want to be in? Does that
Mm-hmm.
feel good to be there? And maybe if you don't mind me going back a little bit, like I struggle all the time. Like when I look at the design world, what's going on, what trends are happening, or like what systems are, being developed, or, how can I grow that side of me? I can get really sucked in and pulled into that. And it can kind of pull me away from my intuition and this like very flowing creative I guess energy that I can embody. So I kind of have to like go in, look, and then come back out, close the door, and be like, I'll come visit in a little bit, and then go back to my creative side and go back to my intuitive side. And like, I feel like I'm always popping into the spaces that inspire me, but then tucking back out into like my space, my room that has like 5 or 8 different doors that I open when I need to. And, that's just, I think that's how I find the balance is I trust myself and I come back to me. And sometimes I'm insecure. Sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
doubt myself. That doesn't mean that space is devoid of that, but I know that that's a great space. I know that I've cultivated a beautiful room for myself and I have access to these doors when I need to and when I want
Mm.
to. So,
That's such a beautiful analogy. And I just think that, you know, I don't, and I think it goes with anything. Like, I don't think we're always heart centered, and it's going to be a
yeah.
lifetime's work of like reminding ourselves to come back to our heart. And, that is, in my opinion, like where the intuition sits. It's like the seat of the soul,
Mm-hmm.
it's your heart. But it's like
I
a
agree.
constant journey to keep coming back there, mainly because, like, I mean, we live in a society that tells us otherwise, tells us to come from the head and like,
100%, 100%. And that's what society tells us that it values, right? Is
yes.
like logical thinking and rational thinking. And if you take a risk, it should be calculated. But that's not what the word risk means. Like when you leap, there should be some doubt or questioning in that. And that's okay. That's all
Hmm.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and like, do you have practices that you do to come back and to keep reminding yourself when you feel like you go too far into the heady world of like,
Mm.
coming off center, or like even moments when you doubt yourself, like what practices do you have to keep coming back to your heart?
Yeah. I think it's so funny to me. I really divide those two questions, but
But I'm
in
like,
terms,
you can split it. Let's do
yeah,
it.
thanks. Okay, good, good. Yeah. I think, yeah, if I go too far into, you know, for example, the design world, and it's not, I feel like when I say that, it's like, oh, the design world's bad. Obviously, it's not, but it just doesn't suit me and my alignment. But yeah, I think I eventually start to feel it. Like it feels wobbly to me. Like I'm
Mm.
starting to learn that my balance is not in, like, it's not in the design world, nor is it in the intuitive world fully. Like it is really centered in between. So I start to feel it and I start to feel wobbly. But yeah, I think I always come back to like meditation. I'm a big fan of like tapping. I like to, I know I should journal, but I have like blocks around that. But I'll voice memo to
Hmm.
myself.
Oh my God, I
You
love a good
know,
voice memo.
I
I'm out
know.
in the street talking to myself all the time.
I know. Oh my gosh, I'm not that good, but I'll definitely like sit in my bedroom, like close the door and like, voice memo out or even like sometimes I'll voice memo a friend of mine and then I'll delete it after be like, never mind, I figured it out. Like I just needed to process out loud.
That's the projector in you. It needs a sounding board.
I know. Yeah. Oh, you got me thinking about that. But yeah, I think those are my main things is I'll meditate, I'll tap, I'll voice memo. And then I think there are other things too. Like I love a good like dance session. I'll dance in my living room. Like I've done that all 2020 and you just shake it out sometimes and you don't feel like it. You're like, oh, I don't want to move. But then you're like, no, we'll just two-step it. And then two-step it, turns into wiggling and you got your head bobbing and your hips are going. You're like, yeah, okay, I feel it now. that
Yeah.
that.
And
Yeah.
what I find really interesting, and I think this is like an important lesson for like entrepreneurs, because we, talked about this before we hit record, is like, not only do you incorporate intuition into the design process, but even when it comes to working with people, and I think it's important for people who are
Mm-hmm.
first starting into entrepreneurship or even like well on the journey, that like not every client is going to be for you, and how important it is to work with someone who feels aligned.
Oh my gosh, this is so huge. And I feel like I've known this lesson for a long time, but I've only maybe just starting to put it into practice. So it's huge, but yeah, like, I mean, I'll just share, like I was saying to Laura, there earlier this year, I had 3 clients lined up, or I had 2 clients lined up to do like a discovery call. So they were potential clients. And then this third one came in and that client's meeting happened to be in between the first and the last. And I took the first meeting, it went great, super cool business, really liked the client, was going to go away and quote. And just everything inside me was like, no, this client whose meeting is in the middle, I don't know them, I've never met them, I don't know their business, but I am so lit up, like I am giddy with excitement about them. I
Mm.
don't know what it is, I just have such a great feeling. And I ended up telling the first client no, unfortunately it's not, there was something about the timing, the alignment, it's just not in it, or it's just not aligned right now, pardon me. So I said no, and I was scared, I was like, oh my God, have I just like shot myself in the foot? What if I take this meeting with this client I'm really excited about and we're not aligned? And like, you know, I just said no to another cool job. Like, what
Mm.
just, but I was like, I'm going to trust my gut. And I went into that, meeting with that potential client. And it was so awesome. And it's been yes, 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 all the way through. And, they are a current client. And it's just so fun. And I'm just so lit up by it. And it's amazing. I've said yes to those clients that didn't feel like a hell yeah, that didn't light me up. And yeah, it was still a good project, but there was some bumps along the way and communication misalignments occasionally, nothing disastrous or anything. But it just feels completely different than when you get a client and it's a yes, and your whole body is lit up by it, and your whole being is just, yeah, like it's like you're both lighthouses or one of these lighthouse in a boat and it just clicks.
Oh, so your analogies
So,
are really great.
oh, you're
I think
welcome.
I think this is like a really important lesson in honing in on that intuition, to be honest with you, because I think
Mm-hmm.
I think when we practice intuition, and it definitely is a practice that we build, we look from
Yeah.
like this moment forward and like I have these opportunities in front of me or whatever.
Mhm.
But I think when we take a step back and look back at what has gone past and really recognizing how it felt in the
Mhm.
body, like what a hell yes actually felt like, and what like, ooh, I knew there were some flags there, like something just didn't feel
Mhm.
right. Sometimes when we force things, or like if there's a ton of resistance, so these blocks and these like, and I think it's important just to take inventory of that, to like remember that like, okay, my baseline is this. This feels
Totally.
no.
Totally. And it's funny because, I hear a lot of entrepreneurs, they kind of have like a checklist of like, okay, like, a client needs to, whatever it is, like they need to say these kind of things, or they need, I think very structurally, we often see, or I often see people who want to work with like environmentally conscious businesses, right? Like it could be a very tangible checklist,
Mm-hmm.
and that's great. But I also think, yeah, there's like this intuitive checklist of like the feeling, and you can still use that to create tangible things so that, if you're not feeling as connected, you can still go to that checklist as like a backup and
Mm-hmm.
say, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But you're right. I think the reflection, like, that's been helping me. Like, I can go back and be like, well, what projects am I really proud of? And what did that feel like? And
Mm.
which ones am I like, oh, yeah, that was okay? And what did that feel like? And then it's like a big light bulb moment. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah. I got you, universe. All right.
Yeah, yeah, it's so interesting.
Yeah,
Um, I want to shift gears a little bit because as I was
cool.
doing some research on you, I saw something on your website. I could see your face like, oh, she's gonna ask me about this. And you talk about the energy, like business is energy. And I
Mhm.
would love, like I read it and I kept reading it and I'm like, there's something here that we need to talk about. Talk me through that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I have a blog post on my website around that. And it's funny because there's a part two to that, but such a big thought that I had to give it some space. But yeah, business is energy. So essentially it comes from this belief for me, like everything has a vibration, everything has an energy, and not just, okay, me, a human, and like trees and animals, like plants. Like, yeah, of course, we understand that they breathe and live, but also, water has an energy to it. And it's not quote unquote living the same way that animals and I do, but it's got a life of its own. And its own vibration. And I mean, I'm always like looking at the science and in the intuitive realm as well. But in the science realm, like everything is made up of molecules and they vibrate at different rates.
Hmm.
So we have our solids, our liquids, and our gas, right? So that's a frequency there. And the Heart Math Institute, I think they're in California, they've
Hmm.
proved, they can measure an aura or a frequency about a foot off of humans, right? So we know that we carry an energy to us. And I really believe that that applies to inanimate objects like my cup or my vase or my phone. Well, that might be different because that definitely emanates waves, but these inanimate objects have a life or an essence to them, and so does intangible things like a business. And you might have a tangible part of your business like your product, or yeah, just like your office, or that might be, but it's 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 the whole. It's like your business has a soul. It has its own personality. It has its own, yeah, traits. It has its own mission, and you're part of the mechanism or the vehicle to bring that into earth. And so I think that's kind of what I'm getting at. And to me, it's similar. Like it has a vibe, and when I'm designing, I want to not just tune into my client's vibe who's bringing this forth, but like they're tuned into their business's vibe. So it's kind
Hmm.
of a double thing. It's not always going to be 100%, like your business personality or essence isn't always going to be 100% you. It probably has a few other little nuances to it that you want to express or evoke. And I think like another way maybe to, or that I think about it is, it's like, yeah, if your business has energy, it has the capacity to magnetize things to
Mm.
it, and it has the capacity to, yeah, create impact and grow, expand. You know, like it's alive. Like that's what we do. Like it's also alive. And I kind of liken it to like if you go to a party and you meet a friend's partner for the first time, or you meet someone you've never met, right? Like friend of a friend, and maybe you click and it's like your best friend. Like it's like you've known each other your whole life. You don't know what it is. You've never met them, but you click and you
Mm.
just vibe together, right? And I think a business is like that. If we get the alignment correct, if we get the clarity as to like what we're doing here, why you're doing this, and what it's set out to do, then we can design in that alignment and it'll magnetize in a very clear, crisp, energetic frequency. And you will just meet people and it will be easy,
Yeah.
what I believe. And
I
not
I
just
I
go
couldn't
ahead.
agree more. It's interesting because I started doing some one-on-one like business strategy work with
Yeah.
somebody, and she like explained to me where her challenges were, and I'm like, you're missing the soul of your business. Like that, I think you just don't have clarity, and you haven't tapped into the soul of your business yet. And we worked on that, and as soon as she did, everything clicked, and she like signed a client for 3 months and like all of this stuff. And I was just like, you just haven't tapped into the heartbeat of your business. And I think that's what's missing. Like, I almost liken it to like, even when you look at like Ayurveda and stuff like that, they talk about like the different layers of the body, like the physical body and
Mm.
then like the pranayama body and like all the different layers till you get to the soul. And it's like no different in business. And I'm totally
Mm.
butchering explaining that. I will preface
Yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah,
I
yeah.
know like
We get the
5%.
gist.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get the gist.
But I liken like a business to that as well. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like here's the exterior. I'm like a coach or I'm like a this or I'm a that kind of thing.
Mm.
But like until you really tap into the like soul of your business, like your customers won't know what you do if you don't know.
No, and that and it's so funny because like I think that's really what makes businesses successful is understanding the core and understanding the heart-centeredness of it. And like I don't necessarily mean heart center as like this really emotional, like wishy-washy place. Like, no, it's like this really powerful, like momentous, like I don't know, like yeah, I don't know how to explain it. It's like this, it's got its own fire, right?
Yeah.
It's got its own life.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that because I've recently, like in the last maybe 4 or 6 months, have sort of redone my design packages where I do more of that deep dive up front because it helps me design a better brand. And some people don't have that clarity yet, and
Hmm.
they kind of need that support and they kind of need a little bit of guidance because they have it, just they haven't stopped to tap in
Hmm.
and get clarity.
And
Yeah.
sometimes they just
Yeah.
haven't like it's almost like you haven't thread the needle yet. Like it's all there in pieces. You just
Hmm.
need to like put the thread through it all kind of thing. It's also really interesting because the more I started digging into this, and I think this is probably why I resonated so deeply with like business as energy when I read that on your website. Because I read an article recently and they were talking about how startups, because like I come from the tech world and I still like am interested in that side of business.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they talk about how when startups first start, like they have a heartbeat. There's just something different about them. But as they get bigger and as they get acquired and things like that, the shift is often that they lose the soul of their business, which is like super interesting.
Well, totally. And like, I think, again, because I think, yeah, I've thought about this too, especially in regards to like even Apple, right? Like Steve Jobs to me, and I think a lot of people would agree, like he was the heart of that business.
Hmm.
And he was so innovative and he really proved, yeah, I think he had proven himself a lot within the business and then out in the world. And so when he wanted to do something, he was given free range, right? It was like, we'll let Steve Jobs do whatever he wants because it's amazing. And
Hmm.
it probably was very different from the way other people did it. And that's kind of what worked. And I think when we start our businesses, like again, we're so attached and connected to the energy of our business that that's kind of carried within us. So if we step aside or if we expand so much and we can't like really, I think, spread that message down into the team, or if the board is disconnected, depending
Yeah.
on what kind of, if they're disconnected from it, then yeah, I think it's hard to transition it, or I think it can be easy to let it slip. Yeah. Yeah.
So tying all of that together, just, like everything that we've talked about, what
Mm-hmm.
advice would you have for somebody who is like just getting started? You know what I mean? Who like think they might be intuitive, or they have this side that they like keep in the closet, you know what I mean? And are just like stepping into, whether it's a job, whether it's a business, whatever it is. But what advice would you have for someone to like, because I really think you're on to something that I haven't seen in many other people.
Thanks. I
I'm like,
so
so how do I be
appreciate
more like
that.
you?
I so appreciate that, because I all the time am like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it this way? And then I
That means you're
present,
doing
people
it
are like,
right.
this is so, I know. Well, that's the thing. And then I get amazing feedback, and I'm like, oh, what was I worried about? But it just, somehow I always trust my intuition, even if I question it logically. But I guess that's it. Maybe that's the advice, is like, if you have an inkling towards something, try it. Like, try it,
Mm,
and stay open and curious, and also, do what feels right. Like, there's, even in the intuitive world, there's like lots of rules, quote unquote, as to how to do something. But like, at the end of the day, you have an energetic alignment. Do it the way that flows for you.
hmm
Don't hurt anyone, and all that basic stuff, but do it the way that works for you.
hmm
And just embrace being different, and know that that's okay. And I think, moving forward, the future will really start to embrace that. I think that side of us, like the thing that makes us tick, or the thing that makes us special, I think that is becoming more valued in our society. So be it, do it, and love yourself.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
So I have some rapid fire questions, and they can be
Cool.
rapid or they can be not. So it's up to you.
Okay. Okay.
What does purpose mean to you?
Purpose to me means, like, really knowing who I am, like taking off all the masks that I learned to put on from society and family and friends or whatnot. Really knowing who I am, being in alignment with that, and feeling free to express that.
I love that. What makes you feel the most alive?
Dancing, or being by the ocean, or trekking in the trees.
Nature, nature, nature. I love it. I mean, I don't know about you, but that's where I draw the most, my creative like energy comes from. Like if I'm stuck, get outside, get outside.
I was gonna say, if I'm grounded, or if I need grounding, yeah, like walking in the trees. It's like, it like encloses me, but allows my brain to just like, and I think that intuitive, like, nattering, like, oh, what about this? What about that?
Yeah.
Part come up. Yeah. Yeah.
What is your biggest hope for the collective right now?
I think it's, yeah, to come back to love.
Mm,
Remember that you are loved, that you are worthy of love, that love is where healing happens, that love is where inspiration happens. We're all connected. And through that, I think, can embrace our individuality and difference.
mm,
So,
love
yeah.
it. What possibility are you opening yourself up to?
What possibilities am I not opening myself up
Whoa.
to? um, I'll maybe just share two, but yeah, the first one, I think, is just moving into more of a space, kind of, I guess, like a creative director space in my business. So doing more concept and strategy and grounding work with the client, as well as like inspiring, and being a balanced leader to a team.
Hmm.
And then the second is, yeah, I've always had this weird, well, it's not weird, come on now, but I've always had this vision of me like standing in front of a group of people and talking. And I don't know where that fits in, but I know that's coming. And so I'm just trying to be open to that. And, yeah. And actually, can I share a story?
Absolutely.
Okay. It's funny because this is making me think. Back in 2017 and 18, I used to go around telling people I was like, I'm going to be the next mini Oprah. And and people were always shocked and like amazed. And I was like, why is that like amazing? Like I was like, I don't understand why it's so
Why are
shocking to
you
me. And then
laughing?
I know, I was like, what? Duh. But then eventually I was like, oh yeah, Oprah's like a big deal. Like this is actually a lot of pressure and like a lot, this is a high standard that I'm just putting myself up to. So I stopped saying that. But there's still a few people in my life who are like, I remember when we met and you said you were gonna be Oprah. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. But I was talking to my mom about it, and she recently had said, she was like, when you were little, you used to say that you were gonna be like Oprah. And I was like, no, I did not. She
You're
said,
like, I knew I was
yeah.
intuitive.
And I was like, man, who we are as children is who we are as adults. And like the things that make us light up or like, inspire us. There's something about that, at our core and in our soul. So anyways, I don't think I'm Oprah, but maybe I just want to like secretly be a TV talk show host. I don't know.
I love it. I mean, well, this podcast is you sitting in front of people and
Yeah.
talking. So,
Yeah. I'm ready. I want more.
oh,
So
I love it.
thanks, universe. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want people to know before they sign off today?
Anything else I want people to know? Like anything at all? What was
Anything,
my
like what's sitting
answer?
in your heart, anything.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. Okay. I'm really intrigued with what's coming up even personally. Whatever the word professional or professionalism means to you, you can throw that out the window. Like you can really define that to be whatever you want it to be. And, I always feel like I need to be like, pardon me, ooh, as my throat just
Your
clogs
throat
out there.
chakra is
Hello.
like, hello.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I always feel like I need to be prim and proper and really like hold my own in meetings or yeah, just like be really professional on my Instagram or whatever. But at the end of the day, like that's not I mean, I have that, but I'm really bubbly and playful and animated and you know, I think you can still be professional and be who you are. So throw it out the window, redefine it, be you, you can do it.
Oh, mic
Yeah.
drop. I love it. I love it. I love it.
But I know
The
I mean
final
it.
question, and this is a really easy one, but where can people find you?
Well, you can find me online at my website at www.sallua.com. That's Sallua. And you can also find me on Instagram at Sallua_intuitive design.
And I lied. There's one more question.
Oh, okay.
What
No
does
worries.
Sallua mean?
Oh, well, it means salt moon. So Sol is the word for salt in Portuguese, and Lua is the word for moon in Portuguese. My family is from Portugal. And yeah, it just means, salt we put on things to cure, to be long lasting, but also to bring out the flavor and the essence in
Ooh,
food. So that's what I do. And then, of course, the moon is associated with creativity and intuition and, feminine energy. So that's me and that's who I work with and what I do.
I
So
love it. I love
yeah.
it. Oh my God,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Well, Kat, I just want to thank you for your time and thank you for coming on. Like I said, you have such a special energy, and I hope that people listening can even feel a ounce of that. And I really feel like the way you do business is it like I've never seen anything like it, and I just wish more entrepreneurs would be aligned with that. So
Ah,
thank you.
thank you so much. Yeah, this was so much fun. And I have lots of gratitude and I really appreciate it. It's been
Oh,
great.
awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
From my heart to yours, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard and the message resonated with you, please subscribe, leave a review, give us a 5-star rating. And if you think someone else needs this message, please forward it to them. For daily updates and inspo, you can follow us on Instagram at soulbody.co. Until then, I'll catch you next week.